Welcome to My Thailand Stories. Today we hear from a warehouse supervisor from Newcastle who fell in love with the limestone cliffs and emerald waters of Krabi. A charismatic couple showed him hidden lagoons, secret islands, and an investment opportunity that promised financial freedom. But behind the speedboats and professional paperwork was an elaborate performance that would cost him £23,000 and 9 years of careful saving. Here's his story. I'm Daniel. I'm 35. And I stood outside a massage parlour in Ao Nang staring at a space that used to be a tour agency. The tour agency where I'd signed a partnership agreement 3 months earlier, where I'd shaken hands with Wichai and Araya and believed I was becoming a business owner. Except now there was just a woman offering foot massages and asking if I wanted to come inside. My business partners were gone. Their phones were disconnected. And my £23,000 was somewhere in Thailand with two people who probably weren't even called Wichai and Araya. Let me tell you how it happened. I work as a warehouse supervisor for a logistics company in Newcastle. By October 2023, I'd been working there for nearly 9 years. The job paid reasonably well, but it was physically demanding and mentally draining. I managed a team of 15 people, dealt with constant delivery delays, and spent most of my days troubleshooting problems that shouldn't have existed in the first place. I was tired, and I desperately needed a break. I'd saved up £31,000 over those 9 years. Every overtime shift, every Christmas bonus, every tax refund. It was supposed to be for buying a house, but every time I looked at property prices in Newcastle, I realised I'd need twice that amount just for a decent deposit on a small flat. The money sat in my account. I kept thinking there had to be better ways to use it. Maybe starting a business. Maybe investing in something that could actually change my situation, instead of just sitting there earning 1% interest. In late October, I booked 2 weeks off work and flew to Thailand. I'd never been to Asia before, but I'd seen countless photos of the islands and beaches. I wanted somewhere warm, somewhere beautiful, somewhere that felt like the complete opposite of my grey industrial life in Newcastle. I chose Krabi because it looked stunning and was supposed to be less touristy than Phuket. I arrived on a Wednesday morning. The flight from Bangkok to Krabi was short. When I stepped out of the small airport, the heat and humidity hit me like opening an oven door. I'd booked a hotel in Ao Nang, the main beach area. Mid-range, nothing fancy. But it had a pool and was close to the beach. I checked in, dropped my bags, went straight out to explore. Ao Nang was busier than I expected, but in a good way. The main street was lined with restaurants, massage shops, tour agencies, and souvenir stalls. The beach itself was beautiful. Long stretch of golden sand, clear blue water, and those famous limestone cliffs rising out of the sea in the distance like something from a movie. I walked along the beach, watching the long-tail boats bobbing in the shallow water, and I felt myself starting to relax for the first time in months. That evening, I ate dinner at a beachfront restaurant, ordered pad thai and a chang beer, watched the sunset. The sky turned orange and pink and purple. I thought to myself that this was exactly what I needed. No deadlines, no angry phone calls, no problems to solve. Just this moment. Just peace. The next morning, I decided to book a tour. There were dozens of tour agencies along the main street, all advertising island hopping trips, snorkeling, kayaking, visits to famous spots like Railay Beach and the Hong Islands. I walked into one of the agencies. Small shop front with photos of pristine islands plastered across the walls. Behind the desk sat a Thai man in his late 30s, lean and tanned, short black hair, easy smile that reached his eyes. His name was Wichai. He greeted me in excellent English and asked what kind of tour I was looking for. I told him I wanted to see the islands, maybe do some snorkeling, visit places that weren't too crowded with tourists. He nodded knowingly, said he had the perfect option. He ran private tours with his own boat. Not the big group tours that crammed 40 people onto a speedboat like cattle. His tours were smaller, more personal. He could take me to islands that the big tour companies didn't even know about. I liked the sound of that immediately. I asked how much it'd cost. He said 3,500 baht for a full day. That worked out to about 80 quid. That seemed reasonable compared to the group tours, which were around £40 but packed with people taking selfies and complaining about seasickness. I told him I'd think about it and come back later. Wichai smiled, said no problem. No pressure. Then he said something that stuck with me like a hook in my brain. He said, "You look like someone who appreciates quality. If you want to see the real Krabi, not the tourist version, I can show you that. But it's up to you." I left the shop and spent the rest of the day exploring Ao Nang. But I kept thinking about what Wichai'd said. The real Krabi. That was exactly what I wanted. The next morning, I went back to Wichai's shop. He was sitting behind the desk, looking at his phone, relaxed and unhurried. When he saw me, his face lit up and he stood up. I told him I wanted to book the private tour. He said excellent. We agreed to start the following day at 8 in the morning. He'd pick me up from my hotel. The next morning, Wichai arrived exactly on time in a white pickup truck. Board shorts, tank top, sunglasses. Looking every bit the professional tour operator. He greeted me warmly and we drove to a small pier about 10 minutes away. There, tied to a wooden dock, was a white speedboat. Not huge, but it looked well maintained and powerful. The engine gleamed in the morning sun. That's when I met Araya. She was standing on the dock. Thai woman. Maybe early 30s. Beautiful. Long dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Wearing shorts and a loose white shirt. She was checking equipment on the boat. Wichai introduced her as his girlfriend and business partner. She smiled at me. Her English was excellent. Better than Wichai's, actually. She said she handled all the bookings and customer relations. Made sure everything ran smoothly. We loaded our things onto the boat and set off. The engine roared to life. We sped away from the shore, heading toward the cluster of islands in the distance, the wind in my face, the spray of seawater, the stunning views of limestone karsts rising from the ocean. It was incredible. Wichai steered the boat with one hand, completely at ease, pointing out landmarks, telling me stories about the area. Araya sat next to me, asking about my life in England, what I did for work, if I was travelling alone. She was friendly, easy to talk to, not pushy, just genuinely interested. Our first stop was a small island with a hidden lagoon. We anchored the boat and swam into a narrow passage between the rocks. Inside was a perfectly calm pool of turquoise water, surrounded by towering cliffs. There was absolutely no one else there. Wichai said this was one of their secret spots, a place the big tour boats couldn't reach because the entrance was too narrow. I felt like I'd discovered something truly special, like I was seeing something most tourists would never see. We spent the morning snorkeling, exploring caves, visiting 2 more small islands. Araya prepared lunch on the boat. Fresh grilled fish, rice, fruit. We ate while floating in the middle of the ocean, surrounded by nothing but water and limestone karsts. It was one of the best days I'd ever had. I felt alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. On the way back, Araya and I talked more. She asked what I did for work, and I told her about my job in Newcastle. She seemed genuinely interested. Asked if I enjoyed it. I was honest with her. I said the pay was decent, but I felt stuck. I'd been doing the same thing for 9 years. I couldn't see a way forward. I couldn't see myself doing this for another 20 years until retirement. I told her I had some savings and I often thought about starting my own business. But I didn't know what. I didn't have any skills beyond logistics and warehouses. Araya listened carefully, nodding. Then she said something that caught my attention. She said running a tour business in Krabi was one of the best opportunities in Thailand. The tourism industry was booming. Everyone wanted to see these islands, and there was constant demand for quality tours. She said she and Wichai had been running their business for 5 years. It had grown steadily every year, but they were limited by the number of boats they had. They could only take 1 group out per day, which meant they had to turn away customers during high season. She said it broke their hearts to turn away business. I asked why they didn't just buy another boat. Araya glanced at Wichai. He said they'd been thinking about it constantly. But boats were expensive. A good quality speedboat cost around 1.5 million baht, roughly £35,000. They had some savings, but not enough. Araya said if they had a partner, someone who could invest in a second boat, they could double the business overnight. Run 2 tours per day, hire another guide, split the profits equally. Real partners. I didn't say much at the time, but my mind was racing. This was exactly the kind of opportunity I'd been thinking about for years. A business in a growing market. Something hands-on and exciting. Something completely different from my life in Newcastle. Something that could actually generate real income instead of just sitting in a warehouse, watching my life tick away. And Wichai and Araya seemed like the real deal. They had the knowledge, the experience, the connections, the reputation. All they needed was capital. When we got back to shore, I thanked them for an incredible day. Araya said I was welcome anytime. She meant it. As I was leaving, she said, "If you're serious about doing something different with your life, think about what we said. We could build something great together. Something real." I went back to my hotel room and sat on the balcony, looking out at the ocean, watching the long-tail boats drift by. I couldn't stop thinking about it. What if I invested in a boat with them? What if I became a partner in their business? I could keep my job in Newcastle for now, come to Thailand a few times a year to check on things, collect my share of the profits. Or better yet, maybe I could eventually move to Krabi full-time and run the business myself. Wake up every morning with the sun on my face instead of the grey rain of Newcastle. The next morning, I sent Araya a message. I told her I was very interested in discussing the business opportunity further. She replied within minutes, suggested we meet for dinner that evening. She said she and Wichai wanted to show me the numbers, explain exactly how the partnership would work. She said they didn't do business casually. They did it professionally. I agreed. We met at a restaurant near the beach. Nice place. Comfortable. Araya arrived with Wichai. She had a folder full of papers. She ordered us all food and drinks, then opened the folder and started explaining their business model. She showed me receipts from previous tours, bank statements showing deposits from customers, a detailed breakdown of their monthly income and expenses. Everything looked legitimate and professional. Numbers, dates, stamps, everything. She explained that during high season, which ran from November to April, they could easily fill 2 tours per day. Each tour could take up to 8 people at 3,500 baht per person. That was 28,000 baht per tour, 56,000 baht per day if they ran 2 tours. After fuel costs, staff wages and maintenance, the profit was around 35,000 baht per day. Split between partners, that was 17,500 baht each, roughly £400 per day. I did the math in my head, trying to stay calm. If the high season ran for 6 months, that was 180 days. Even if they only operated 5 days per week, that was still massive income. Araya said during low season the business slowed down, but there were still enough tourists to make it worthwhile. She estimated that over a full year, each partner could make around £50,000 in profit. That was more than I earned in my warehouse job, and I wouldn't have to do anything except invest the capital up front. I asked how much they needed for the second boat. Wichai said a good quality speedboat would cost 1.5 million baht. They'd already saved 500,000 baht from their profits, so they needed another 1 million baht, about £23,000. Araya said if I could provide that amount, we'd be equal partners. Split everything 3 ways. She and Wichai would handle all the operations, the bookings, the tours, the staff. I just need to provide the investment and then collect my share of the profits each month. Simple, clean, professional. It sounded almost too good to be true, but I kept reminding myself that this was a real business. I'd been on the tour myself. I'd seen the boat, experienced the quality of service firsthand. Wichai and Araya weren't some random people I'd met in a bar. They were legitimate business people with an established operation. The only question was whether I was willing to take the risk. I told them I needed a few days to think about it. Araya said that was completely fine. No pressure at all. But then she mentioned something that created urgency in my mind. She said they had another potential investor, a German guy who'd been coming to Krabi for years, who was also interested in the same partnership. She said they wanted to give me the first opportunity because we'd built a good rapport, because she felt we could work well together. But if I wasn't ready to commit, they'd need to move forward with the other person. She said the high season was starting in 2 weeks. Every week they delayed was lost income. Thousands of pounds just evaporating. That created a sense of urgency I couldn't shake. I didn't want to miss this opportunity. I didn't want to go back to Newcastle and spend the next year wondering what if. I went back to my hotel and spent the next 2 days thinking about almost nothing else. Researched the tourism industry in Krabi, looked up boat prices online, even contacted a mate back home who worked in finance to get his opinion. He said it sounded risky, but potentially profitable if Wichai and Araya were legitimate. He advised me to make sure everything was documented properly, with contracts and legal agreements. Don't do anything on a handshake, he said. On the 3rd day, I contacted Araya and told her I was ready to move forward. She seemed genuinely excited, almost emotional. She said this was going to be great for all of us. We arranged to meet the following morning to discuss the legal details and sign the partnership agreement. She said they'd bring their lawyer to make sure everything was done correctly and legally. She said she wanted me to feel completely protected. The next morning, we met at a small office building in Krabi town, about 20 minutes from Ao Nang. Araya and Wichai were already there with another man, a Thai guy in his 50s wearing a white shirt and glasses, looking every bit the professional lawyer. Araya introduced him as Prasert, their lawyer. Prasert spoke reasonable English and shook my hand formally. He had printed documents laid out on the table, all looking official, with logos and stamps. Prasert explained that Thai business law required certain procedures for foreign investment in local businesses. He said the easiest way to structure the partnership was for me to provide the capital as a loan to their company. In return, I'd receive a third of the net profits each month. The loan would be secured against the boat, meaning if anything went wrong, I'd have legal claim to the asset. He said this was standard practice for foreign investors in Thailand. He said he'd handled dozens of these agreements. I asked if I'd have any ownership rights or control over business decisions. Prasert said that under Thai law, foreigners couldn't own more than 49% of a Thai business in certain sectors, including tourism. He said the profit-sharing agreement was the most straightforward and legally compliant way to structure the partnership. Araya added that she valued my input and would always consult me on major decisions. But operationally, it made sense for her and Wichai to run the day-to-day activities since they were based in Krabi full-time and knew the business inside out. I wasn't entirely comfortable with that arrangement, but Prasert assured me that the contract was legally binding and enforceable in Thai courts. He said if there were any disputes, I'd be protected under Thai law. Araya said she understood my concerns completely, but she reminded me that this was about trust. She said we'd spent time together. I'd seen their business firsthand. They were offering me an opportunity they didn't have to offer. She said if I didn't feel comfortable, she'd respect that and move on to the German investor. No hard feelings. I didn't want to lose the opportunity. I told them I was ready to proceed. Prasert went through the contract line by line in both Thai and English. The English version stated that I'd provide 1 million baht as an investment loan, that the funds would be used to purchase a speedboat, and that I'd receive a third of net monthly profits for a period of 5 years. After 5 years, we'd renegotiate the terms, or I could exit the partnership. The contract also included clauses about dispute resolution and termination conditions. I signed the contract. My hand was shaking slightly, but I signed. Wichai and Araya signed as well. Prasert witnessed all signatures and stamped the document with an official-looking seal. He gave me a copy and said I should keep it in a safe place. Araya shook my hand firmly and said we were now business partners. She hugged me, said this was the start of something amazing. She said the first step was to transfer the funds so they could begin the process of purchasing the boat. It'd take about 2 weeks to find the right boat, complete the paperwork, get everything registered. I asked how I should transfer the money. Araya said the easiest way was to transfer it directly to their company's Thai bank account. She gave me the account details written on a piece of paper. I told her I'd need to go to a bank to arrange the international transfer. She said no problem. Wichai offered to drive me to a bank in Krabi town where they could help me set it up. We went to the bank that afternoon. I sat down with a bank officer and explained that I needed to transfer £23,000 to a Thai bank account. The officer asked for the account details and processed the transfer. The exchange rate wasn't great, but I ended up transferring just over 1 million baht. The officer said the transfer would be completed within 2 business days. I received a receipt confirming the transaction. Araya seemed very pleased. She thanked me, said this was the start of something great. She said she'd keep me updated every step of the way as they searched for the right boat. She also said that in the meantime, I should enjoy the rest of my holiday. She offered to take me out on another tour free of charge, as a thank you for investing in the business. I accepted. We agreed to go out again in 2 days. Those 2 days felt surreal. I'd just invested nearly all my savings into a business in Thailand with people I'd only known for a week. Part of me felt excited and optimistic, like I'd finally done something bold with my life. Another part of me felt anxious and wondered if I'd made a huge mistake. I tried to push those doubts aside and focus on the potential. If this worked out, it could change everything. Araya and Wichai took me out on another tour as promised. This time we visited different islands, and they introduced me to a few other tour operators they knew. They told them I was their new business partner. People congratulated me, shook my hand, welcomed me to the community. It felt real. It felt like I'd made the right decision. Araya and Wichai were well connected, respected in the community, clearly knew what they were doing. On my last day in Krabi, the three of us met for lunch at a beachfront restaurant. Araya said the money arrived in their account. They'd already started looking at boats. She said they'd found 2 potential options and would be inspecting them over the next week. She promised to send me photos and updates constantly. She also said that once the boat was purchased and operational, she'd set up a system where I could track the bookings and income remotely through an app. She said transparency was everything to her. She wanted me to feel confident in the partnership. She wanted me to trust them completely. I flew back to Newcastle feeling hopeful for the first time in years. I'd taken a risk, but it felt like a calculated one. I returned to my warehouse job, but now I had something else to think about. Something that could lead to financial freedom and a life beyond the grey monotony of Newcastle. I checked my phone constantly, waiting for updates from Araya. A week after I returned home, Araya sent me a message with photos of a white speedboat. She said this was the one they wanted to buy. It was in excellent condition. Low engine hours. The owner was selling it for 1.4 million baht. She said they'd used the 1 million baht I'd provided, plus some of their own savings, to complete the purchase. She asked if I approved. I looked at the photos. The boat looked great. Beautiful, actually. I told her to go ahead. 2 days later, Araya sent me another message saying the purchase was complete. She sent photos of herself and Wichai standing next to the boat with the previous owner, all of them smiling. She said they were now registering the boat and getting it ready for service. She said the first tours with the new boat would start the following week. I felt a rush of excitement. This was really happening. I was a business owner. But then, the communication started to change. Araya's messages became less frequent. When I asked for updates on how the tours were going, she'd reply with short messages saying everything was fine. Business was good. But she was very busy, too busy to chat. I asked when I could expect the first profit payment. She said she needed to wait until the end of the month to calculate everything properly. Then she'd send my share. The end of the month came and went. I didn't receive any payment. I messaged Araya asking about it. She apologised, said there had been some unexpected expenses. The new boat needed repairs that weren't apparent when they first inspected it. She said the engine had issues, and they had to spend 80,000 baht to fix it. She said once that was sorted, everything would be fine, and payments would start flowing. She sent me photos of the boat in a repair shop, which seemed to back up her story. I was frustrated, but I tried to be understanding. Unexpected expenses happen in any business. I'd worked long enough to know that. I told her to keep me updated and let me know when the repairs were finished. She said it'd take another 2 weeks. 2 weeks passed, I still didn't hear anything. I messaged her again. This time she took a full day to respond. She said the boat was fixed, but now they were dealing with some paperwork issues related to the business license. She said Thai bureaucracy was incredibly slow, but everything would be resolved soon. Another month went by. I'd now been back in Newcastle for nearly 2 months. I hadn't received a single baht in profit. Not 1 penny. I started to feel uneasy, like something was wrong. I messaged Araya more frequently, asking for detailed updates and financial records. Her responses became even more vague and delayed. She'd sometimes take 3 or 4 days to reply, and when she did, she always had another excuse. Bad-weathered, cancelled tours. Low season started earlier than expected. One of the boats needed more repairs. A customer damaged equipment, and they had to replace it. I decided I needed to go back to Thailand and see what was happening for myself. I couldn't just sit in Newcastle wondering if I'd been scammed. The not knowing was eating me alive. I booked a flight for early January, about 3 months after my initial visit. I didn't tell Araya I was coming. I wanted to see the reality of the situation without giving her time to prepare a story or set up another performance. I landed in Krabi on a Tuesday morning, took a taxi straight to Ao Nang, checked into a different hotel, one that was further down the beach from where I'd stayed before. I didn't want to risk running into them before I was ready. I dropped my bags in the room and immediately walked to the location where their tour shop had been. When I arrived at the address, my stomach dropped. The shop was gone, completely gone. The space was now occupied by a massage parlour with purple neon signs. I stood there staring at it, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, my brain refusing to process it. I walked inside and asked the woman working there if she knew what had happened to the tour company that used to be there. She said in broken English that she didn't know. She'd only been renting the space for 2 months. She didn't know who was there before. She asked if I wanted a massage. I felt panic rising in my chest like water filling my lungs. I pulled out my phone and tried calling Araya. The number rang, but no one answered. I tried again. Same result. Just ringing into emptiness. I sent her a message saying I was in Krabi and needed to speak with her urgently. No response. Not even the blue check marks showing she'd read it. I walked up and down the main street, looking into every tour agency, hoping to see her or Witch Eye. Nothing. I asked at other tour agencies if they knew Araya or Witch Eye. Some people said the names sounded familiar, but they couldn't place them. Others said they'd never heard of them. I went to the pier where we'd departed for the boat tours. I asked around, showing people photos of Araya and Witch Eye that I had on my phone. A few people recognised them vaguely, but no one had seen them recently. One man, an older Thai guy who operated a longtail boat, said he remembered them. He said they used to run tours but hadn't been around for at least a month, maybe 2. He said he thought they'd moved to Phuket or maybe Bangkok. He wasn't sure. He shrugged like it was no big deal. I felt physically sick. My hands were shaking. I'd been scammed. All the signs were there now. So obvious in hindsight, it hurt. The urgency to close the deal, the other investor who supposedly existed, the lawyer who may or may not have been real, the vague excuses and delayed responses. I'd ignored every red flag because I wanted so badly to believe that this opportunity was real. I went back to my hotel and sat on the bed, trying to figure out what to do next. I still had the contract that Prasert had given me. I pulled it out of my bag and read through it again. The contract listed an address for their business. I decided to go there and see if I could find anything. Any clue, any trail. I took a taxi to Krabi town and found the address. It was a small office building, older, a bit run down. But when I went to the unit number listed on the contract, it was empty. Completely empty. No furniture, no signs. Nothing but dust and a few dead insects on the floor. The building manager told me that unit had been vacant for over a year. Nobody had rented it. I asked if he knew anyone named Araya or Witch Eye, if there'd been a tour company operating from that address. He said no. He'd never heard of them. I showed him the contract. He looked at it and shook his head. He said the stamp on the document didn't look like any official Thai business stamp he'd seen before. It looked fake. He suggested I go to the police. I went to the Krabi town police station, explained the situation to an officer at the front desk. He spoke some English, enough to understand what had happened. He took down my information and asked for copies of the contract and bank transfer receipts. He said he'd file a report, but he was brutally honest with me. He said cases like this were very difficult to resolve. He said Araya and Witch Eye could be anywhere in Thailand by now, possibly using different names, possibly in another country entirely. He said even if they found them, recovering the money would be nearly impossible. He said I could try to pursue it through the courts, but it'd be expensive and time-consuming. No guarantee of success. He said most foreigners just gave up. I spent the next 3 days in Krabi, desperately trying to find any trace of them. I went back to the pier every day, visited every tour agency I could find, asked everyone I could find. A few people remembered them vaguely, but no one knew where they were. One person told me they'd heard rumours that Witch Eye and Araya were known for running scams on foreign investors. They said they'd done this before, setting up fake partnerships, taking money, then disappearing. They said they probably moved around Thailand doing it in different tourist areas. I felt like the biggest idiot in the world for not researching them more thoroughly before handing over my life savings. On my 4th day in Krabi, I received a message from an unknown number. The message was in English. It said, "Sorry for what happened. Business did not work out. We will pay you back when we can. Please do not contact us again." I tried calling the number immediately. It was already disconnected. I tried replying to the message. It didn't go through. That was the last contact I ever had with anyone connected to Araya or Witch Eye. I flew back to Newcastle a few days later, completely devastated. I'd lost £23,000, my entire savings, money that had taken me 9 years to accumulate. 9 years of overtime shifts and skipped holidays and saying no to things I wanted. I had nothing left. I couldn't afford a house deposit now. I could barely afford to cover my monthly expenses. I had to move out of my flat and into a cheaper place with thin walls and damp in the bathroom. I picked up extra shifts at the warehouse just to make ends meet. My life had gone from bad to worse, all because I'd believed in a dream that was never real. The worst part wasn't just the financial loss, it was the psychological impact. I felt humiliated. I felt stupid. I'd always considered myself a rational, careful person, but I'd been completely taken in by a well-executed scam, a riot in which I'd played their roles perfectly. The friendly tour guides, the successful business people, the trustworthy partners. They'd shown me just enough to make it believable. The boat, the tours, the other operators who seemed to know them. It had all been part of the setup. Every single moment had been calculated. I later learned, through online research and forums for scam victims, that this type of scam is common in tourist areas across Thailand. Scammers target foreigners who are on holiday, relaxed, open to new opportunities. They build trust quickly through shared experiences and personal connections. They create urgency to pressure the victim into making fast decisions. They use fake documents, fake offices, sometimes even accomplices who pretend to be lawyers or business associates. By the time the victim realizes what's happened, the scammers have disappeared, and the money's gone forever. I reported the incident to Action Fraud in the UK, but they said there was little they could do since the crime occurred in Thailand and involved Thai nationals. They said I could try, working with Thai authorities, but as the Krabi police had already told me, the chances of recovery were slim to none. I contacted my bank to see if there was any way to reverse the transfer. They said once the funds had been received by the recipient, there was nothing they could do. The money was gone. It's been over a year now since the scam happened. I've managed to save up about £4,000. Nowhere near what I had before. I'm still working at the same warehouse, still living in the same cheap flat with damp walls, still trying to move forward. The emotional scars have faded somewhat, but they haven't disappeared. I'm more cynical now, more suspicious of people and opportunities that seem too good to be true. I've learned a very expensive lesson about trust, about due diligence, and about the dangers of making impulsive decisions based on emotion rather than logic. £23,000. That's what it cost me to learn that the beautiful woman and her charming boyfriend, who showed me hidden lagoons and secret islands, were professional con artists who'd done this before and would probably do it again. That's my story. I handed over my entire life savings to two people who staged the perfect performance. I hope sharing this prevents someone else from doing the same. Thanks for sharing, Daniel. The tour investment scam is one of the cruelest cons in Krabi because it weaponizes both dreams and trust. Daniel lost everything to a couple who knew exactly how to make a lonely man believe he'd finally found his way out. This is my Thailand stories. Watch yourself out there.